question number 1 is brought to you by the Youth Ministry Roundup newsletter. That's right. I have a newsletter if you're not familiar with it. Every week, I send out a newsletter, and in that newsletter, you can see there are trends and culture articles. There's youth ministry articles, there's videos, there's job postings, there's what I'm reading, there's free stuff, there's playlists sometimes that I have that I'll do like for this month. I had September bangers. That's right. Music that I think is really good. Some that would be good in your youth room. So every week, if you want really good information like this in your youth room or in your inbox, you want the September bangers, the music. You want that in your youth room. You want this in your inbox. So if you would like that, go check it out. I'll put a link down a little bit later in the show notes there. But if you just go to thediscipleproject.net, you can find it there, and you get a little freebie, by the way. You get a little freebie for signing up, a little free lesson, a little something for you, okay? All right, so let's move on to the question then. And the question is this: should we charge students for food? I happened to see this recently, and I've heard this before. This is not the first time this question has been asked. In fact, most youth ministry questions are ubiquitous in the world because standard youth meetings all have kind of the same profile, so a lot of the same questions get asked. And in this case, the question is, should we charge for food? And this question is usually based on the fact that there's not enough budget, right? There's not enough budget for the church to pay for everything. And so I would say my answer to this is really easy. It's no, as in never. I think it sends the wrong message to the church, to the students about the church. It says, by the way, you should come here and pay for the food we're going to give you. I don't even understand that concept. The deal is, if you're the youth pastor and you're struggling, it's time to ask for a bigger budget. Listen, all of us as youth pastor, raise your hands. Nathan, I'm expecting a like from you if this is true. How many of you have paid out of your own pocket for food, supplies, resources? All hands are raised. The issue with that is that when we do that, we get the church off the hook because we say, well, this need has to be met, so I'm going to do it. Rather than go into a board meeting, a deacon's meeting, or whatever it is, and say, listen, you pay me this amount of money, and I am paying for things that should be in my budget. And if you don't have a budget, you should have a budget. You should ask for a budget. You should say, I want a budget, and I want to know how much I can spend every month so that I can... Nathan says, I've done that. Hey, I've done that. Me too. And so if the issue is let's say the scenario is, there's not enough, you have X amount of kids, doesn't matter. 10 kids, 12 kids, doesn't matter. And you're buying the food and the church is not participating in that, you need to tell the church you need a budget because you're not paying for this out of pocket anymore. We want a budget. How much can I spend? I think, look, if you're just doing a normal thing, I think $100 a month just for food, depending on the size of your group, $10 is $100 is pretty basic. It's a basic amount. And every week you could do $20 or $25 in snacks, food. And I'll tell you this, I just went to the grocery store, and I think we know this, prices are up on food. So guess what? Budgets have to adjust to meet that need. And so if you don't have a budget for food, you need to work with the people in your church and say, we need a budget for food to make sure that we have some food every week, an overall youth budget to be able to say, look, I'm not paying for all this out of my pocket. This is not going to happen. And then the second scenario is, let's say B is your youth ministry is growing. And now what you were spending to feed 7 to 10 kids, you're now having to spend on 20 to 25 students. And so guess what? It's time to go back and say, hey, listen, we've grown. we'd like to see the budget grow as well. And especially if it's sustained growth, especially, and you're continuing to grow. And that's why you keep good records. How many did we have in youth this week? How many did we have in youth next week? Last week? How many did you have, this week? And so as you begin to have data, right, to have data, you say, okay, based on the data that our numbers are growing, this is happening, we're going to need a bigger budget. Like we're going to need a bigger boat. We're going to need a bigger budget. And so never be ashamed. I am never ashamed to ask for money for the youth, ever. And I'm going to ask, and I'm going to keep asking until I'm not putting out money out of my own pocket. And so, should we charge students for food? The answer is no. 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 Just no. The other half of that is, if you're not budgeting well, that's one thing, by the way, youth pastors. If you're not budgeting your what you do have well, if you're sinking a ton of money in other stuff, you just need to readjust your budget. I'm not putting this all on the church or the pastor. If you're not using your budget well, I can't help you there. You reallocate some of the money you're spending on this or that to put it in your food budget.